In the story Star witnessed, approximately 7 to 10 years ago, Star was told by someone named Moses Solomon that the story of Daniel hasn't happened as yet. Why? Because Daniel wasn't born prior to 2014. So let's read what His Majesty has to say. It is our hope that efforts for peace would not confine themselves to verbal statements, but would work out in the actual relations between the nations of the world. Haile Selassie. So let's see who's going against his word.
Civilizations is that the British royal family has been flat-lie royal since 1840.
Explain that.
Flat-lie royal means illegitimate, not allowed on the throne. So, from the Battle of Waterloo, the British royal family lost all their money and they've been funded by the Rothschilds in exchange for breeding rights. So the Rothschilds had the breeding rights to the British royal family from 1819 to 2019.
Remember, the entire European monarchy are all related to each other. Why? Because they are all descendants of Cleopatra and other ancient Egyptian pharaohs.
So what was the purpose of the Rothschilds needing this?
And that's what made them royal.
The British royal family were virtually bankrupt from 1815. So the Rothschilds funded the British royal family in exchange for the Rothschilds breeding the royals. So the whole British royal family are Rothschild Batards. And Batard is the royal name for bastard. So what I did in my legal documents is I exposed King George V of England as being sired by Tsar Alexander III of Russia, and I exposed Queen Elizabeth II as sired by artificial insemination by Winston Churchill, who was actually the illegitimate son of King Edward VII.
Hang on.
I know, it gets too much, so I'll show you a chart.
Okay. So you've got it all laid out for us to see?
Absolutely. One of the causations.
What else is going on in the world?
Okay, and so is anybody shocked that we are now agreeing to send troops into the Middle East? You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be, because every time Bibi Netanyahu has arrived at Congress to say that he wants war, we go to war. Let's just take a trip down memory lane.
If you take away the Soviet Union and its chief proxies, the PLO, international terrorism would collapse.
If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. Obviously, with
Hello, Ezekiel 38. Libya, Persia, Ethiopia. And people from the north, after many days thou shalt be visited in the latter year, thou shalt come in the land that is brought back from the sword against the mountains of Israel. So they're going to come into Ethiopia, where they will find Sheba. And she's going to be like, art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take a great spoil? So you see, after Assur or Russia helps Iran defeat these guys, they're going to try to expand.
we'd like to see a regime change, at least I would, in Iran, just as I would like to see in Iraq. The question now is a practical question. What is the best place to proceed? It's not a question of whether Iraq's regime should be taken out, but when should it be taken out? It's not a question of whether you'd like to see a regime change in Iran, but how do it...
Are there any other nations that you would recommend that the United States launch preemptive attacks upon at this point?
The answer is categorically yes. The two nations that are vying, competing with each other, who will be the first to achieve nuclear weapons, is Iraq and Iran.
And both are controlled by Nabuchodonosor. And Nabuchodonosor has help with Russia.
Through God's wisdom and revelation, Daniel was able to interpret the dream. The dream revealed to King Nebuchadnezzar a powerful image of a large statue made of different materials, symbolizing different kingdoms and their rise and fall. This vision conveyed that God was the ultimate authority and ruler over all kingdoms, including Nebuchadnezzar's own. Later, King Nebuchadnezzar's pride caused him to erect a massive golden statue of himself and command all people to bow down and worship it.
The In other words, Satan wanted you to worship him and not God. And if you worship him, you live. And if you don't, he's going to
He
try
told
to
them
kill
that
you.
these 4 different sections of the statue represented 4 different kingdoms that would come. The Neo-Babylonian.
Not that would come, is that what happened already. In other words, they changed the entire story. Nebuchadnezzar is supposed to be here at the end of times or in the latter years. He was not here thousands of years ago. He was told at the end of time, this is what happened prior. First, there was the Babylonian Empire.
Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, and the Roman Empire.
Right? So he's going to help defeat Rome in the end when he himself is part of the same eagle. So it's like 2 feathers fighting against each other.
Now, at the bottom of the statue, the base, in the dream, a stone comes down. It strikes the statue, the whole statue crumbles, and from that stone grows a mountain that would encompass the entire world. The head of the statue represented Nebuchadnezzar's own empire.
Right, so at the end of times, his empire is going to seem like it's controlling the entire world. So if you're not down with what he's saying, he basically is telling you that you're down with God. Because at the end, it's going to be very easy. Either you're down with an evil empire or you're down with God. And if you're not down with the evil empire, then the evil empire will want to kill you. But God is going to save us in the end.
Other sections of the statue represented the 3 kingdoms that would follow his empire. Now, the stone that struck the statue, basically destroying...
Not follow what came before his empire. Why? Because we know he's supposed to be here at the end of time. So let's read. Darius, if you don't know, is just another name for Nebuchadnezzar. So in the book of Daniel, the king of Babylon, but he is not known to secular history. In other words, he's mentioned in the Bible, and they want you to believe that in their versions of the Old and New Testament, that these characters of today or in the future were here thousands of years ago. So he's mentioned in the book of Daniel. So most scholars view that Darius as a literary fiction. In other words, King Darius was not here thousands of years ago. He's supposed to be here at the end of times. So let's read what he's going to do. He's going to put a decree out that if you don't, and the decree said, basically, if you don't bow down to him, he's basically going to kill you. You know what I mean? So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. In other words, you were not allowed to pray to anyone except him for 30 days. So then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. So why was he praying? So it pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps with these administrators. So we will never find any basis or charges against the man Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of his God. Why? Because he follows the law of Moses, because they are of the same family. So basically, Darius is going to say, you got to pray to him for 30 days. If not, basically, you're going to get thrown into the lion's den. So let's watch.
Number 1, you have to be a Gentile kingdom. 2, you have to defeat your predecessor. And 3, you have to have control over Jerusalem. So with that being said, it's a lot easier to identify which kingdoms are in the statue. And read Daniel 7 too, because the 2 chapters that go hand in hand. Now,
remember, Iran is Persia, and they're attacking Jerusalem as we speak. So in the time, you will find Nebuchadnezzar, also known as Darius, also known as Nabuchodonosor, and he's the king. So when is he supposed to be here? And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven would set up a kingdom that would never be brought to ruin. And the kingdom itself would not be passed on to any other people. In other words, it's supposed to happen at the end of times, as mentioned in Ezekiel 38. After many days thou shalt be visited in the latter years, when an army from the remote part of the north, which will include Persia, some people in Ethiopia, because don't forget, the people that deposed Emperor Haile Selassie were part of the Derg. and the Derg were backed by Russia itself. And Russia is basically friends with Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya. But in the end, God has said he's going to turn thee back, and put hooks into thy jaws. Why? Because they're going to feel like they control the whole world, as mentioned in the Ethiopian original tongues. So in the books of Esdras, it tells you in the latter years, you will find Solomon, the son of David, for he's going to build the ark of the Lord. Who else are you going to find? You're going to see woe be unto Babylon. Why? Because Nabuchodonosor is here at the end of times. And he's going to be controlling Jerusalem, Babylon. He's going to be controlling Persia. He's basically going to control the whole Middle East, because the entire region from Egypt to Ethiopia was called, Egypt to India was called Ethiopia. So Darius, also known as Nebuchadnezzar, is going to be controlling all those parts. And he's going to be backed by Russia. So that's why God said, woe be unto Babylon and Asia and Egypt and Syria. Why? Because they all are down with the same person. And when is this going to happen? Woe be unto them that are bound with their sins and covered with their iniquities, like as a field covered over the bushes, and the path thereof covered with thorns, that no man may travel through. It is left undressed and is cast into the fire to be consumed therewith. In other words, it's going to happen at the end of times. So in the end of times, you're going to find Nebuchadnezzar. He's also in the book of Judith. And what's going to happen? Nebuchadnezzar was very angry with all this country and swore by his throne and kingdom that he will surely avenge upon all. In other words, he wants to kill anyone that's not down with him. So from Jerusalem, God is going to show himself. So Assur came out of the mountains from the north. He came with 10,000 of his army, and multitude whereof stopped the torrents, and the horsemen covered the hills. He bragged that he will burn up my borders and kill my young men with a sword, and dash the suckling children against the ground, and make my infants as a prey and my virgins as a spoil. Almighty Lord have disappointed them with the hand of a woman. Why? Because Judith helped kill them in the end. They perished by the battle of the Lord. So he that feareth the Lord is great at all times. At the end, basically, you're going to have a choice, either to follow Nebuchadnezzar or follow the Lord. And it will be made very easy. So in the end, you're going to find two dragons. So he made two lots, one for the people of God and another for all the Gentiles. And these two lots came at the hour and time at the day of judgment before God among all the nations. In other words, to the end of times. That's where you will find Nebuchadnezzar. So what happened to him in the end? For the Almighty God have turned to joy unto them that day wherein the chosen people should have perished, but it didn't, because it will make you think that his Nebuchadnezzar is going to kill everybody. Therefore, every city and country, whatever, shall not according to the things that shall be destroyed without mercy with fire and sword, and shall be made not only unpassable for men, but also for most hateful to wild beasts and fowls forever. In other words, at the end of times, in the part of forever, In other words, follow God, not man. And God is supposed to be here at the end of times to let him know that God runs things and his kingdom wins in the end.
Babylonian captivity, perishing gold, originally, astrologically.